This lecture is an introduction to management thought, the different approaches to understanding management, the historical perspectives of management thinking, their contributions, especially of the scientific and administrative approaches to management. The learning objectives. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand the historical perspectives in management thinking, the significance of different approaches to management, and their relative contribution. The history of management thought has been long and checkered. We can trace it back to ancient times, the River Valley civilizations, the Sumerians of 5000 BC, who had written documents, extensive system of record keeping and taxation, the Egyptians, who in 4000 BC had planned cities, and which reveals much control and organizational effort. In the Indian subcontinent, you have the Arthashastra, which is a treatise on social and political thought written in the 6th century BC. There were big projects, building works, specialized building works, which provide evidence of control, of processes, of elaborate processes of planning, and the history of management can be traced back to these organized efforts using human and other resources to accomplish elaborate tasks. In medieval times, think of Venice, the Venetians, with their elaborate canals and systems, processes to carry goods for mercantile activity, banking, finance, etc. In the Industrial Revolution, in Europe, you have the contributions of Adam Smith, who wrote his Wealth of Nations, who talks about both specialization and control. James Watt, who laid down standard operating procedures. Similarly, Bolton, Matthew can all be, had elaborate plans, work methods, incentives, wages, etc. Robert Owen is attributed an elaborate setting up elaborate personal management systems, training workers, housing. He was conscious about these things and he paid attention to it. Similarly, James Mill, he was focused on human movement at work. Charles Babbage adopted and elaborated on a scientific approach to work organizations and work settings. Marshall Loeffling, he laid down the relative importance of management aspects of work. So by the beginning of the 20th century, management had appeared as a major activity. Elaborate systems required planning, effective use of resources, implementing the action plan and achieving something. Management was there to stay and to enable people and organizations to achieve. We shall now look at scientific management, and the contribution of Taylor, Urwig and Fayol in this context is significant. Scientific management, at its heart lies the principle that man is motivated by rational economic needs. So man has some social and some economic needs. Work can be scientifically analyzed and broken down into parts. Workers can be scientifically selected, trained, developed to work according to the best method, the best process. So there was one best way which could be devised, designed, and planned, and people could be trained to adopt it and to make functional and elaborate machines, or you know work on the assembly line to achieve some goals. Workers' cooperation was considered crucial, and so there was a clear relationship. If you gave higher wages, you could expect an increased output from your workers. This enhanced both efficiency and productivity and eliminated waste. These are the ethos which propelled management thinking and management thought. There was This movement has often been labeled scientific management. We cannot move further at this point without looking at bureaucracy, what it meant, and why did it come about? Why do we need a bureaucracy? This is a question that all of us need to ask ourselves, because bureaucracy has sustained over a number of decades and centuries. Bureaucracy is common to all large-scale organizations, whether in the public sector or in the private sector. Weber described the ideal type of bureaucratic structures, and this had specialized task allocation, which made for both continuity and permanence, a clear hierarchy of authority. So there was someone at the top, and then it was a pyramidal structure with more numbers as we went down the pyramid. Focus on rules and on standardization led to uniformity of decisions. So every time the same decisions would be made effectively. Recruitment and promotion was based on knowledge and skills. These are the underlying principles for bureaucracies, and this is partially explains the enduring character. Humanistic approaches can be traced to the 1927 onwards, which was a reaction against scientific management approaches. Humanistic approach focused on people rather than on the work and the uniformity and rationality of work and work settings. It is a response to the classical perspective. It had a clear focus on people and their behaviors. Hawthorne's studies was an experimentation which was done, and importance of the social group is recognized. It highlighted work groups, motivation. It is important and significant to design jobs, and then communication and management are follow from it. All of this leads to improved performance. So there was an emphasis on the social group, on motivation, and worker participation was crucial to improve performance for enhanced productivity. Managers had a job to make employees happy. Later contributors to the human relations approach are Maslow, Herzberg, and McGregor. The Hawthorne studies were a series of experiments. They manipulated lighting, rest periods, and meals, and all this manipulation in a particular manner increased productivity. Humans both dislike and avoid work. This was counterintuitive to work is natural, it is play or rest, and these are the two sides to the argument. Motivation involves coercion, motivation rather than coercion, control, and threat. So if you could get people's commitment, get people to be committed to the objectives of the organizations, individuals then direct themselves and control themselves in order to achieve that goal. So there was a lot of emphasis on self-direction and self-control. Responsibility. People needed to assume responsibility and they had little ambition. People learned to accept and seek responsibility under right conditions. Traits of human beings. They are self-centered and don't like change. And this was in juxtaposition to human beings who had imagination, who were ingenious, and who were creative. Following through, we have the systems approach to management thinking, where organization is viewed as a whole and as part of a larger context in which it is located. The parts and the whole are interdependent. Changes in one impacts upon the others and upon the whole system. So organization is an open system. It is continually interacting with its context. It is influenced by and in turn influences it. So there is a close interaction between the organization and its environment and its context, and both of them have an impact upon one another. Following closely is the contingency approach, which builds upon the systems approach. Organizations are dynamic, and it is this dynamism, this connection of the organization with its environment, which has the explanatory potential to address complex problems. And it produces most flexible options. The best practices and structures are contingent upon the situation at a particular time, which is subject to changes. The most flexible options, the best practices and structures are contingent upon the situation at a particular time, which is subject to changes. There is a constant focus on adaptability and change in keeping with situations and contingencies. What lessons can be drawn from these approaches? what learning can be acquired from these approaches. On reflection, we realize that none of these approaches by themselves are sufficient, are able to explore and explain the dynamics of people and their organizations. Managers and leaders need to have an idea and to learn from all these perspectives. The history of large-scale organizations reveal that at different times and needs, different approaches have become popular and have endured, while others have diminished. And then, when the situation changes, another approach might become more relevant. Managers need to combine and adapt different approaches. Theory and practice are very closely intertwined. More complex and reciprocal views of organizations and their contexts are hence revealed. Organizations in the 21st century are powerful economic entities. Thank you. We will now move on to the next one.